Hey guys, Kirk here, and thank you for joining me on a new video on the channel. This is part 2 of our optimization workflow for our landscape shader that I've been creating over the past few months on this channel. In the previous video, our part 1, we did our slope detection and our snowcap logic. And essentially the aim of this optimization is to try and reduce our instructions in our shader. Our current instructions, if you have a look here, not showing me at the minute, but our current instructions are not too bad for what the shader does. If we have a quick look here, you can see we've got some nice blending. Ignore the UV tiling for now. But essentially we want to arrange our shader logic to the point of where we only have to duplicate one function to create a new biome. In the last video we sorted out our slope detection. As you can see, I've drawn inputs into here. So on the outside of our green biome function, we just have to plug in our material layers, and all our scalar parameters are here to be used. In part 2 I was going to do the flat area blending, but essentially it would have just been the same as our slope detection and snow caps. Now I did record myself doing it and may upload it to YouTube. I did explain what I was doing at the time, but I decided I'm not going to publish it. I'll just showcase what I've done. So essentially, if you remember, we had the flat ground main function. It was about the same size as this layer blending, but now I've added all the inputs. If I go into here, you can see the mask, the layer blending functions and all that are still the same. All I've done is added all these inputs to it, essentially. There is one key note with my flat ground mask. Although the logic does work, we do have a stray one there. Although the logic does work, I'm thinking personally about getting rid of this section, the transition section. It'll reduce maybe a couple of instruction points, and we don't really use it. So if I come to here, this is our flat ground breakup that we created a while back. And on the outside of it here, if I get really close, you can see little bits of dark patches here that are not, I don't feel it's warranted, or there's enough there to, you know, add a bit of detail to there to try and keep this bottom sections of the edge mask. Essentially this mask, the edge mask, is exactly the same as this mask. This is our flat ground mask. We're just blending them together, we're inverting. Essentially we're flipping it. So essentially this is our mask, our flat ground mask, and then we invert it so the mask is pushed from outside into the mask itself. That's where are you? That's what these two do. The power node is just there to multiply it. As you can see, I'm doing the power of 2, so that's multiplying it by 4. That's just to add power to the blending, the inversion. But I'm not sure that I want to do that. I think we'll be fine with just the one mask. But for now, we'll leave it. We'll sort that out at a later date. There is quite a bit of logic in this build that could be cleaned up. But the priority today, I'm getting a bit of a slowdown on my finger. A bit of slowdown going on, a bit of stuttering. But my priority today is our material layers. If I go into my landscape shader, open up the main shader, like in the last video we moved our surface normals here so they affected all of the landscape. I did remove the forest biome function to create some performance for myself while I changed up. But you can see now all our flat ground inputs are here, our slope blend, our slope inputs are here, and our snowcap mountain, and these are all the material layers. But as it stands, like I say, this flat ground function is fine. All the scalar parameters and kind of inputs that we need are here, ready. So all I'd have to do is to change these names. I've also been looking at giving the option to our artists for advanced controls. Like with these controls, the vector 4s, they do leave the material instance compact. Like if I open my material instance, all these here are vector 4s. But I believe it would be good if the artist had the options, like with the snowcat controls, to have these in scalar parameters individually. Maybe have an option up here saying advanced scalar parameter controls, and that way there's been a min and max setting, and it's more of a tighter control. Whereas this, you can freely move this to any value you want. But that's something for the future as well. But my priority now is the material layers. So if I go ahead and open this, you can see here we've got our flat ground main albedo. Like I stated in last week's video, the last video, I don't think it was last week, it was 2 weeks ago. But like I stated, flat ground main albedo, I mean, it could be better. I just essentially, like it says on the label, ML for material layer, grass A layer. Probably don't need the layer section at the end, but grass A, and we could change all these names to grass A. But there's some stuff in the master logic I want to change, like all of this. We don't need all of this, essentially, and that's taking up instructions. Distant mask. Somewhere in here, I want to add in some sort of debugging for the UV tiling, so we could set individual colours up. I could probably start by doing that, to be honest. Let's cancel that. There's just other things like these inputs. There isn't a lot there, but for what it's doing, like with our height, it's placed in the opacity. I don't know what I was thinking there. It goes out with our opacity. Like the mask there, we don't really need that mask, the component mask there. One major factor what I want to change with this landscape material layer is the option, well, not even the option, I want to completely convert it over to what they're called, Quixel Bridge, that's it. So I want to convert the whole material layer to a Quixel Bridge material layer, so it can be used with Quixel textures, essentially. I want to rewrite my normal logic. We can literally get rid of this and just have it pass through as height. And this logic, I don't know what I was thinking about there. Essentially, this kind of logic you could use with like a toon shader. Things like that, but for here, not really plausible. So the main thing I'm getting at is I want to start rewriting the logic for our material layer. I'm going to find this master layer, the logic side. If I open the master layer, let's have a look in here and just start planning what we're doing. As you can see, it's just a master layer, and we're essentially going to start rebuilding it. So where to start? That's the question. Where to start? What do? We can, I mean, we could start in here, this distant mask. The texture breakup. Texture breakup is fine. That logic is actually sound. It works really well. Possibly the UV scales could be using a multiply instead of divide. Essentially, when you use a divide with UVs other than a multiply you start with low values for bigger textures, whereas a divide, you start with low values for smaller texture. So the more you increase the value, the more smaller the texture gets. Or is it vice versa? Yeah, so the more you increase the value, the divide, the texture gets larger. So it's kind of an inversion, but you need large numbers. As you can see here, I've got a 600 and a 700 as a preview value. That could be one thing we could twinkle with in the future. But for now, my texture breakup's fine. We can have that going on. Maybe my layer blending. In fact, I could put the debug logic in here. Yeah, and I think we'll start with the debug logic. This essentially the debug logic for the UVs. It'll indicate a colour at which our UVs are set at. So at the range, UVs far, I'm going to put that as a red, then a green, and then a blue. So we, it's the colours we all use. But yeah, maybe I'll start with the logic here for the debugging for the UV scale range thing. Sorry, words are all muddled up. And to start this, how should we do this? Let's get a static switch. What we can do, and we'll utilise a vector 3. Now, I'm going to make this so you can't change these because I don't want any active logic inside the material functions. So I can start with a red there and put that in true, and in false to attach it to the RGB. So when I enable distant debugging, it'll switch to the colours, and when it's disabled, it'll obviously use the textures. So I'm going to duplicate that another 2 times and get a bit of slowdown here on my machine. What's going on? Let's back up that so it's all 0. We'll have that as a green, and we'll set this one as a blue. So we can have red, green and blue for far, mid and near. I'll just move that down a little bit. Let's straighten this out. We'll put this one here, like so. And we could just duplicate this 2 more times. When you're doing the shift and D and aligning them up like that, you can utilise, like, if this one was over here and you like where that one is and you don't like where that is, if you do that and shift and D so it's headed in that direction, it'll always line up with the furthest one selected. And the same the opposite way, like with this switch where I'm going to put it back now, shift and A, it'll take it this way. And it'll line up with this one, so shift and A, it lines up. Now they're aligned. I want it like this, so I'll grab all of these and I'll press shift and D and it'll line up with this, which is great. Just keeps that organisation, and this, and you can highlight them singular like that. Shift and D. Beautiful. Okay, so what I want is a boolean, so I'll drag off the value here. Well, that's a lot of stuttering. I hope my voice didn't break up then. I'll get a, nope, wrong one. I'll drag off there again, get an input, a function input, and it'll set it to a boolean. And this can be enable distance logic, like so. We just have a boolean like that. We'll drag a bool off here as well, a static bool. Once we plug this in, we'll get an error, like so, and that's because this is set to a bool this is a static bool and this is not a static bool input. So we'll click on the input, go to the input type and just change it to a static bool, and that error will go away. Okay, so we've got that there now. I'll line this up and we'll drag it over here to jump in here with this. And we'll get a reroute declaration node. Right, and we'll just press save. We'll start to compile shaders, or maybe it won't. What we could do is jump into our distant mask. You can see our enable logics at the top. Do I want it at the top? That's a real question. What I will do is enable distant logic, left control and C, just copy them inputs. Let's have a look. Textures 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, let's have a look at that. Alright, okay, yeah. And that's 4, and that'll be 5. And we can do this input as a 6. And we'll just have it at the bottom. Press save. Keep that open. Just double checking here, guys, to make sure it's all ready before I close it out. Okay, so let's clean this up a bit as well. What we'll do, I'll move that down, just add our debug logic into there. We also need a texture breakup logic. Just bear with me while I think. RER debug y/n. I know it's not that far, but it cleans it up ever so much. You've not got noodles everywhere. I'm going to make a distant logic function. So I'm going to come back to my build worlds, landscape shader, functions. I'm going to create a function in here. You can see the landscape's gone blank now. That's because I've made changes and I have some errors, like shouldn't be there. Maybe if I save that, it'll come back to landscape, or maybe not. Okay, so we're going to right click in here, go to material function, and we'll just call this I'll tell you what we will do. We'll delete that, keep the same name, delete that function. We'll get our distant mask, left control and D, duplicate it, and we'll go underscore logic, like so. We'll open this distant mask logic up. What I want to do, this is the easiest way of doing it. Highlight all of this, delete it, like so. And now we've just got our distant mask logic in there. What I'm thinking now, as you can see, this says global distant tiling controls. What I want is distant tiling controls for each material layer. So it's a good reason to do this. So I'm going to left control and X. And we're going to go right to the logic side. Let's create a bit of space here. And we'll just plonk that here for our memory. Should be alright there now. But anyway, so we've got these, we've got our outputs, which are ready to go. Like so, and now we've created our logic. bear with me guys, it's a bit fidgety this bit. Like so, oh, they'll be alright. So yeah, now we've sorted this quick function out, we'll organise the inputs. So this can be 0, this can be 1, this one can be 2, and this one can be 3. And we can now actually say our distant mask logic, we'll expose it to library just in case I want to use it again. And we'll just save this. And now we've got our function, which is a distant mask logic. We'll go back to our distant mask. And we can simply, let's get on our functions, which is here. Distant mask logic. Like so. What we can do is actually open that logic again, and we'll just copy these inputs, left control and C. Take a copy of them and we'll just paste them here. What I will do first is plug that into our near, plug that into our far. And we've got that set up, and we can actually delete that logic now. We don't need it. We did save it there, the scalar parameters. We've got our texture breakup. What I will do is just organise this a little bit so it looks a little more neater. Okay, right, so we do need to now order these up. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drag off there, get a reroute node, and I'll put TB space Y/N. So that's texture breakup, yes or no. And the reason I've done that with the switch, I'm putting it here, is so I can swap the order of these inputs. Now these I can automatically have at the bottom, like so, and it doesn't matter about the order. And then when we set all these up properly, we can grab all these, like so, left control and A, left shift and A, just to line all them up right. We can actually get rid of one of them, increase performance a little bit, just plug that in there, that should work fine. So now we're all organised. We want our UVs at the top, so we're going to start, that can be a 0. But that'll do for the distant mask, we'll save that. It'll probably kick us out the function. There you go. And now our distant mask logic function has got, it's almost doubled in size. But this is a good starting point for our material layer. The distant mask is our core section of our material layer. So now we've got our core in there, we can work off this particular function for now. So how should we do this? We'll start with the albedo. I could actually just delete all that, to be honest. We'll move this over here. There's a lot of this, like our material layers, our distant. Oh, look. Let's jump back in there. There, our input. So that was 0. So I still want this at the top, but you'll know, instead of changing all these up one more digit, and it's already the set priority of 0, from there in this engine, Unreal Engine, for the set priority, if you want anything to be below 0, like in real life, just set it to -1, and you can go upwards like that. If I hit apply, like so again, texture set blending, we don't need to technically test this just yet. I do know it'll work, more or less. but we can always come back in here later. But the main priority is that there is no active there's no why let me stop previewing that. Oh, there we go. There's no active static bools or any parameters or anything like that. That's the main thing. So we can actually close that off. This is fine now. It should be in order. Back to our layer, you can see there we've got the texture at the top. Okay, so I am actually going to do this is simply where we've got our inputs here, as you know, for all these noodles here, this craziness, I'm simply just going to drag these and start putting these on top, like so. You know, just make it a little bit more neater. I could just simply drag off that output and just straight into that texture input. And it gets rid of that noodle, and that noodle goes behind the function and the input, so it does look a little bit neater. You can see I've got my distant UVs there, and my material texture breakup. The rest of them for now are okay. But what I want to do for our distant UVs and our material texture breakup, these are here right now. So what I am going to do is just quickly reroute declaration node them all, so they're all ready to go. Obviously you know how to do it. You drag off the first one, RER, I've named the reroute declaration node. I'm just going to call this MTB for material texture breakup. It could be a dash and then UV1. Yeah, and then I'll simply duplicate that, and this could be UV2. So what I'm going to do now, guys, because like the last video was so long, I'm just going to do these 6 inputs here into these reroute declaration nodes, so I'll speed the video up. Okay, so as you can see, I've now added reroute declaration nodes to them. So now they're available for me. So if I come to the top, you can see we've got MD UV far, material distance UV far, material distance UV mid, and then near that one. And I could simply, it's not advisable, but do a quick save. It'll kick you out, don't worry about that, just go back into it. And essentially all the changes you've made now, we're rewriting the code in the background here. So like I said just a little bit earlier on, this can crash your machine or Unreal Engine, especially when you're doing the inputs like this. Now I've done that, they're connected in there. I can just move these up like so. We'll do a shift and D so they're all at that side. We can just fire that in like so. Dead easy. The next ones are the MTB. So MTB UV2, MTB UV1, and MTB amount. Simply plug these in. What I like to do, because it does crash your machine, like I've just literally just said, with plugging the noodles in, is just plug it in. And just maybe take your time, go and grab the other one and do that. You'll find yourself, once you get accustomed to using functions and just a material editor in general, that you'll be like this, doing this, you know, connecting them all up, dead fast like that. Just take your time, no rush. Well, sound a bit like Bob Ross there, don't I? Just take your time. Right, so we'll jump up there, and now we've got our neat little organisation here going on. Let's have a look. As you can see, we haven't got any distant inputs, but we can literally open our and go, just take them from here. It's easy. Could probably do with, well, we'll come back to them in booleans. Left control and C, left control and V, and we'll just connect these to the bottom. Right, so just for now, we'll get off here, RER, So yeah, that's that one. Do we have the switches for enable distant logic and enable texture breakup? We actually don't. So like I said before, we can go back in here and just pick them up. We'll take the Boolean with us. In fact, we'll take it all. We can use these rewrite declaration nodes outside of here as well. But it won't carry through the material. It just means these outputs that are here will be available in this function. So we'll make a copy of all this. Left control and C. And fire this down here. Left control and V. And then we'll right click. Debug, yes and no. What was the other one? TB, yes and no. We'll drag these up here. Debug. Enable distance logic. Yep. And this is texture breakup. Yeah. There we go. Shift and D. Get that moved in. We'll just go right in like that. Shift and A. Shift and D. Okay, so pardon me. This is technically our albedo. So we'll comment that out. Albedo. Font size of 25, which I always do. And for this, we'll do a red. So 0, 0. Okay. Obviously, our albedo is not finished. For the remainder of this video, I'll finish the albedo. I'm going to need about that much room, I reckon. Okay, so pardon me. What we'll do, we'll start with our colour tint. So I'll get a lerp. This is essentially how we did it before. We'll drag off here, get a blend overlay. Where is it? Blend overlay, and this essentially will just blend. Instead of like, you can get a multiply and do a 3 vector, a constant 3 vector, and then have your brightness in here. But essentially what that does when you do it that way is it essentially just applies a tint over the top of your material. It'll just over top of the texture. Whereas if you use a blend overlay and look inside it, it'll apply the colour tint onto the texture. So you'll still get your normal maps coming through, and your ambient occlusion, it just applies that tint onto it, and you can use it as a brightness as well, and then it appends them all together in an output. So yeah, I've recently come accustomed to using the blend overlay, which is quite good. And then we just plug that into B. What we need now is an input for this. We'll get an input. Function input. This is down as a vector 3, so this could be our albedo colour tint, and yes, I do spell colour in the British way. Albedo colour tint. What I'll do, I'll duplicate that, and this could be our albedo colour tint. Oh, in fact, forget that, because this will, we'll just call this brightness. And we'll change it to a scalar parameter, and that'll just be our brightness. Because we're blending the colours together, and it's based off how bright this is. So essentially it will work as a brightness as well as brightness for the colour, which is a good nifty little trick. What we do want, in fact, wait there. So material colour overlay, we actually already have them inputs, so I can actually delete them inputs, which is brilliant. What I can do is come down here, straighten these up a bit. Them UVs are fine there. Let's drag this out a bit. How do we want this? So material options, material colour overlay. I'll rename that. It'll be albedo colour it in. This one can be albedo brightness, because I know we call it a material, you still want to know what you're affecting effectively. And we'll just move these back. Right, so we'll have them lined up with that one actually. And we'll drag off here and get an RER, or a reroute declaration node. We'll call this albedo colour tint. Yeah. A bit of a sketchy throat. We're going to change all these to red, these ones, because these are logic ones. I do like to call them red. I do like to make them red. Duplicate that, and this one can just be brightness. Like so, and we'll plug that in there, and I can just come up here now. Just right click, albedo brightness, albedo colour tint. I'm going to have to move that up a little bit. We'll get that in there. What I can do is put a pin in there. This just creates that gap there. Like so. That albedo reroute colour tint node can go in there. Close that up a bit. The brightness I'll just put below the blend. Just have it like that. Close that in a bit. And right now, that's our colour tint and albedo brightness, which is cool. From here, cheap contrast. Let me have a look actually. Let's see, we're subtracting, adding one. I'd prefer to just use the power node, a little bit more cheaper, and it does the same thing essentially for contrast. So we'll get here, this is our material contrast, but we'll call it no, we'll leave it as material contrast. We'll get a reroute. I'll just duplicate this, just call it contrast. So yeah, we'll leave it for the albedo, because we're colour tinting and we're brightening the albedo texture, so we'll leave them as that. But for these, we can change these up. So we'll duplicate this. This could be our roughness. Like so. We'll plug that in. Have it like that. Could actually move these out, Shift and D. I think I need a drink. Okay, so we have a normal intensity and the height. I'm going to leave them for now. May conclude this into a secondary video for our material layer. But you can see from looking at that, the reason is because I want to change all this logic up. And after this I want to go on to ORD. So we'll have to make a function up to change that. So here is going to be contrast. Plug that in there. What should we do next? We'll do a... we'll drag that down. We'll move our roughness down as well, because I want all the albedos in the same place. Let's control and D. What I want to create now is my saturation. So material saturation. We've got this. Duplicate it. We'll just do saturation. Let's remember then how to spell it. We'll just plug that in there. Oh, we can just left control and D. We'll do a saturation. As we all know, there is no saturation. We only have a desaturation. We have the name reroute node saturation, which is fine, but desaturation it is. I've never really got the logic behind the desaturation node. You'd think, you know, you could just, because when you're using colours on your material, if you want to make your colours stand out more, you're going to saturate the colour. If you don't want it to saturate anymore, you could just apply some contrast. So doing a desaturation node, I'm not 100% why Epic have gone for that. We'll do a 1 minus here, so we'll just flip it, drag off there, we'll get the saturation input. So yeah, I don't understand why, like I say, Epic have done it that way, but you know, just get on with it, don't we? And that's our saturation done for the base colour. What should we do next? In fact, here, because we've got our colour tint, brightness, contrast and saturation, that's pretty much all we need for the albedo. But when in, no, I can't showcase it because there's no textures. But once you build up your fully fledged shader, you're going to have bits. Maybe you have a dirt layer 1 and a dirt layer 2 that are mixed in with your main dirt layer, if you like, where you have a patchy dirt layer that is blended with your grass, and then you may have a couple more material layers inside that dirt patch. It might be a good idea, now I'm thinking about it, is if we apply some sort of logic here that will allow us to identify what particular layer we're using. And to do that, we can just overtake the colour. If I raise this up a bit similar to what I did with the tiling debug thing. If I just get a vector 3 here, yeah, we'll get a switch. Want a static switch, possible, like so. We can just simply plug that into the true, that can go into the false. We'll make a thing up here, so input, get function input, and this set it to a static bool, and this could be debug layer. Yeah, maybe just debug layer could work. Like that. Alright, I'd rewrite declaration node debug layer. We'll change this to a bright red, like all the others, and then we can just right click and debug layer. We'll just plug that into our value, our switch. And like I say, that's essentially going to allow us in the material instance to enable our debug layer. Now we don't have to put anything in the vector 3 because I'm going to have this set as a parameter, so the artist can actually just change it if they want to. Or would that work? I mean, no, it won't work because I'd have to have an input function here. In fact, I'll just set this to white. And at white, it should be alright. I'll have a look at it later on, once we've finished the full material, whether it'll work just showcasing a white. There, we've got a debug layer at the bottom here. We could just plug that static bool into it. Like so. We'll spread this out. And this could be our RER, rewrite declaration node. This could be base color. So, for our outputs, I'm going to set these to a blue. For the outputs, that's not blue. That's a blue. This is not. Our outputs could be a dark blue like that. But yeah, so essentially, that's fine. And we could just, the good thing about this now is I can move this out like so, and we can just duplicate this now for our ORD texture, But I'm not going to do that now. This video has been going on long enough. In the next video, we're going to continue with our material layer rearrangement. It would have helped if I had just built it normally in the first place, but you know, I'm not going to lie, I was trying to be clever. But like this normal, essentially with this normal here, we're just getting the information into our red and green channel, blanking out our blue channel, and just applying that over into our normal. Simply with a normal, you can just get a lerp. Oh. Just press L on your keyboard and left click, get a lerp. Delete that. Get a vector 3. Put 1 in the blue channel, plug that in. That would go into the normal, and then you will get a value here. Because, well, I tell you what, I'll showcase that when we get around to the normals of how normal maps work within materials. But you can see we've made our changes to our distant mask. Put our distant mask logic into its own function, so it's clearly, someone comes in here, you can clearly see that's our texture breakup logic, which is fine, that logic, that's good. Our distant mask logic, which was done, and our added our debugging for our distance range UVs. Like I say guys, I don't actually know how long this video has been going for. I've not really been keeping my mind on it, but like I've said in the past on this channel, I find a sense in showcasing in detail of how environmental artists and technical artists would go about making a shader. You may see other channels where they showcase building a shader in 10 minutes. It does that when you get a lot of practice in, but I'm trying to teach it how everyone probably learns. There's a lot of details that you have to go into, a lot of debugging, a lot of in and out of functions, changing this logic, adding this logic to get what you want. But yeah, for now that's fine. Sorry, in the next video, we're going to utilize this. Oh gosh, no. Oh, that's messed up. We're going to utilize this here and apply it to, and we're going to change all this to an ORD material layer, and then hopefully get rid of all these noodles. We've already started here to get rid of some of these noodles. But yeah, so look forward to the next video guys, where we will probably have time to finish this material layer off. And the good news is for the videos after that, we're going to be going to the slope layer. And with the slope layer, I have a completely easy way of doing it now with a triplanar projection. It's so easy. So hopefully you look forward to that. And I shall see you in the next video guys. Thank you, bye.